There will always be an extraordinary young person who will suddenly shoot out like a rocket.
When are we going to begin?
And bingo, the whole world really does open up.
Ready?
I did not make that kind of a splash when suddenly the whole world said, hey, come on. What opened up for me were all the roads to the doors. And then the doors opened one by one by one.
Isaac Stern has been playing the violin for nearly 75 years. For over 60 of them, he has commanded center stage.
I love walking on stage. I love being there. I love that moment of looking at the audience. They're looking at me. I'll give you a description. Home. It's where I'm most at home, where I'm happy to be. It's an arrogant answer, but it's true. And you stand and you look, and everybody waits. Then you pick up the fiddle and you start to talk.
You see the personality of an artist as he goes on stage, captivate the audience. The minute they put the bow, then you can hear a fly drop on the floor.
I've always told young performers, never think about going out to the audience and reaching up there. Be yourself and bring them to you and encompass them with your playing in your arms. I began to play when I was 8 years old, and it turned out that I seemed to have an affinity for the violin. I was perhaps 10 and a half, 11, when suddenly it came to me that I wasn't playing at somebody else's behest or being told what to do, that I was doing it. From that moment on, playing the violin became a matter of personal habit, taken absolutely for granted by me, that this is what I was supposed to do. Certainly in the early years, it was my mother's encouragement, pushing, admonishing, listening, who kept me to the work pattern that had to be developed. And then my own, I suppose, first expression of an ego, that anybody who eventually gets to step on stage in one form or another, because without an ego, you can't get on stage. You can't. You have to know that you belong there.
All great music, it touches the soul. You were carried off into, for want of a better phrase, for a brief time, a better world. Interpretation of Isaac, of the great composers. Speaking for myself, it touches me, touches my deepest feelings. When it's a great musical experience, you just walk out feeling better and perhaps having a little deeper view of life and of people.
His parents were emigres from Russia. They took Isaac out of school when he was 8 years old so he could practice the violin. It was the end of his formal education. When he was 12, he began intensive violin training with Naum Blinder, concertmaster of the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra.
Blinder was my principal teacher from the time I was 12 till I was 17, and I never studied with anyone after that. He taught me what I now know to be the greatest thing that a teacher can do, which is to teach you to teach yourself.
He made his recital debut in his hometown of San Francisco at age 14. A year later, he soloed with the San Francisco Symphony. At age 16, Stern was invited to perform the Brahms Concerto on national radio. Thinking he was ready for the big time, his San Francisco patron rented New York's Town Hall and invited the critics. But the reviews were lukewarm at best.
They said I had some talent, patted me on the head and said, go home and practice, and it was a difficult time for me. I disappeared that morning on the top deck of a bus. They had the double-decker buses in those days in New York. And I rode from top to bottom of the island of Manhattan, trying to sort my thoughts out and decide what I was going to do. And finally I said, the hell with it. I've worked this far. I'm going to try again. Yeah, I'm going to go and work, and I'm going to come back.
He took whatever concerts came his way. He performed in small West Coast towns, in homes, and at festivals, any place with an audience. At age 18, Stern was booked back into Town Hall, this time to solid reviews. Then came his big break, when legendary impresario Saul Hurok agreed to manage his career.
Stern was just as much a career maker. He was just as good as Hurok at promoting himself. And he loved Hurok, and they loved each other. But there were very little that you could teach Isaac Stern about to this day. That's why he's Isaac Stern.
Hurok sent Stern on tour around the country. 25, then 30 concerts a year. Finally, in 1943, Isaac Stern made his debut at Carnegie Hall. He had arrived as a professional musician, but the career would have to be put on hold.
I was called in for service, as everybody was, and I had very flat feet. So I was made 4F, or classified as 4F. So I got in touch with USO headquarters and suggested to them that maybe there should be a classical music unit. And they looked at me as if I was insane. But somebody thought about it a little bit, and they just said, hey, may not be a bad idea. Anyway, we were the first musical troupe to go to the South Pacific.
And so, classical music arrived on Guadalcanal. Isaac Stern and pianist Alexander Zakin, the man who would be his principal accompanist for the next 33 years, headed into the jungle, armed only with an olive drab Steinway upright, a trusty violin, and 3 singers from the Metropolitan Opera.
They made an announcement saying, anybody interested in USO show, fall out. They would have trucks available that took us down to what they called the Coconut Bowl. I think Isaac started around 7:30. And he played a variety, if I remember correctly. I'm quite sure he played The Flight of the Bumblebee, a little schmaltzy, but still, you know, good technique. And I don't think we let him go until 20 minutes of 11. Encore after encore. Because they went crazy every time he finished. I think that was why he kept going, because he knew that he had a bunch of guys there who really ate up what he had to offer. The interesting thing was, at that particular point, as they turned the lights on, here in this coconut grove, down in front, this little figure that had been sitting there faded into the jungle. And we all looked at each other and said, oh, I guess the Japanese like good music too.
The world opened its doors to Isaac Stern right after the war. Concert followed concert. He was fabled for his powerful bow arm, his expressive vibrato, and his eloquent phrasing.
Isaac has a sound, you know, which is fleshy. And you can have a beautiful sound, good vibrato, so and so. If there is nothing you can really eat in the sound, it's finished.
You know, we are a single line player. The violin is, after all, a very simple instrument. When you look at 4 strings, a couple of hairs, and a bow, and 1 line. Imagine what pianists have to do. They have to learn 500,000 notes, a movement. We got 1 silly line. Now comes the problem. What do we make with that line?
Isaac is a little bit like Rubinstein. You don't notice his fantastic technique. You only listen to the music. And that's how it should be. You don't have to admire his right hand, his left hand, his vibrato, his staccato. No. Listen to the music. It has it all. It doesn't happen by itself, believe me.
He was this famous artist who flitted by my desk from time to time, going back to Mr. Hurok, and he would look over and smile, and I would smile, and that was as much as I knew about Isaac Stern, other than he was working a lot. He was a marvelous musician. I had his recordings, and making a lot of money for the office.
He was 26 and earning the equivalent of $13,000 a concert. He was hobnobbing with the rich and the famous. He married and divorced prima ballerina Nora Kay. He went to Hollywood. He was paid $40,000 to ghost fiddle for John Garfield in Humoresque. He played the part of a violin virtuoso in Tonight We Sing, and did the actual fiddling for Fiddler on the Roof.
The vast American public first made the acquaintance of Isaac Stern through his appearances with Jack Benny.
He was honestly in love with music and musicians, and he was a wannabe musician himself. And he always had respect and affection for a classical performer, and it was easy to be with him.
Can you tell the difference?
His hands were warm all the time. He practiced constantly. He expanded his repertoire, and by 1956, he was performing more than 100 concerts a year with the leading conductors and the leading orchestras. He formed a chamber music trio. He attended music festivals, and when he was not performing, he was in the studio making records.
He used to be really a favorite at the New York Philharmonic. Before my time, with Lenny, I mean, they grew up with him, he grew up with them. They did immense amount of recording together. You know, Earned with Stern was founded by the New York Philharmonic, I think. Isaac meant recording sessions. It was good for the Philharmonic.
There's a wonderful story that Isaac used to tell about a performance with Bernstein in the New York Philharmonic when they're bowing to the cheering audience, and Lenny Bernstein says to Isaac, "Isn't it wonderful to be young and famous?" as the crowd is yelling bravo. And yes, and Isaac with this great seraphic smile, yes, absolutely, that's what it's all about.
He had been born along the Russian-Polish border in the town of Kremenets in 1920 into a Jewish family. His mother had been required to wear the yellow Star of David when she traveled outside their home district. For Jews in particular, the future was uncertain. In 1921, the family fled across Siberia and booked passage to San Francisco.
We left Russia when I was 10 months old. My memories of the trip don't exist. But I grew up in the early years hearing the Russian language, which they used in the house, especially when they didn't want me to understand, which made it possible for me to learn naturally.
In 1956, the now internationally famous Virtuoso was invited to tour the Soviet Union. He played 21 concerts in 27 days.
In those days, in the 50s, the Cold War was still very much on. And it would take many, many years before they would resolve some of the issues in the Cold War. But the way they tried to start resolving those issues was to try cultural exchanges. Isaac spoke Russian, and obviously he was going to be one of the great big cards that Tsar Yurok was going to offer in exchange for God knows what. And so in 1956, when I was in Moscow, Isaac came to play a series of concerts. Concerts were, of course, wonderful. The reaction to them was, of course, thunderous. But there was something more than that went on. In each place, he would talk to the audience in Russian. And when an American artist came and addressed them in their own language, it established a bond between them that was really, really, really quite unbelievable. A year later, people would say to me, "You say you knew Isaac Stern?"
He left the Soviet Union, firm in the belief that the making of music could bring countries together.
If orchestras, symphony orchestras, would lead their lives as do nations politically today, you'd never hear a concert. Come in together on the same beat? Play the same note at the same time? You're wrong. Your notes are wrong. Only my notes are right. You know, when would you ever hear a concert? And music, why I am so passionate about it, that in order to have music together, they have to think of we rather than they.
Isaac Stern had played with the Moscow Philharmonic Orchestra in the Soviet Union in 1956. They were reunited in 1999 on American soil.
You see, Isaac, one-on-one, is a great teacher. And I still remember, sometimes he would tell me something, and to this day, every time I play the phrase, I said, remember Isaac was saying that. And it sort of stays with you.
When I would be at rehearsal with Isaac, and what Isaac would tell the orchestra, I would also be learning. When I did the Brahms Concerto for the first time with Isaac, I had already conducted the Brahms Concerto a few times. I was very confident. I wasn't afraid at all. But what he would tell the orchestra and what he would bring out of them, I would tell the orchestra the next time I did the Brahms Concerto with somebody else. You understand? So I learned a lot from him.
In 1965, I spent 3 days and 3 lines of the Beethoven Concerto. On one hand, he opened up a well that still I'm still taking out of it stuff. It's amazing. On the other hand, he made it impossible for me to play it.
Most of the great fiddle players I've known in my life are far better fiddlers than I am. They play better, they are more disciplined. I can sometimes get into a phrase, and I can share my own inner thoughts rather than outer, more visible feelings, perhaps better than some others. If you know music, if you really know music as a professional musician, you learn how much you don't know and how much there is always to learn. Then you learn that you can spend a whole life and not learn everything. But then you have a respect for learning, for others' learning. And you have a need for other people with whom to exchange these ideas. Music has been, for me, a humanizing factor in my voice. I've spoken more about humanity in playing than I do in talking. But I can talk better now than I can play.
He said something that I've always remembered. He said, you must never play a single note without thinking, why am I doing this? Or why am I not doing it? And he also said something, you need to think with your head, but always play from your heart.
The stage where all musicians want to play is the auditorium on 7th Avenue and 57th Street in New York City, Carnegie Hall. Isaac Stern first played there at the age of 22. Since its construction in 1891, it has been the launching pad for the world's finest musicians.
If you can say I played at Carnegie Hall, you did good. The problem is after Carnegie Hall.
I dreamt about it when I was a kid. One day I'm going to play at Carnegie Hall. I remember my parents always mispronounced it. They call it Carnegie Hall. We're going to play in Carnegie Hall. And I practiced.
Carnegie Hall for any musician it's a breaking point in your career. And for me to happen at the age of 13, it was a double whammy because I was so young.
It really is surprising to me to see how excited they are. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm at Carnegie Hall. And they're really excited, really excited. I think it takes the light off of them because they're so impressed with being at the building.
It has an aura that no other hall in the world has. No hall in the world has had every, without exception, every single important orchestra, conductor, pianist, cellist, violinist, singer, every single one who hasn't wanted to come to Carnegie and has. It's the only stage in the world that has had everybody.
But by 1960, Carnegie was targeted for demolition. It would be replaced by a garish red porcelain-paneled office tower. Efforts to save the historic building had failed. Then, a determined Isaac Stern decided to get involved. He brought together bankers, fellow musicians, and politicians, and from the road, coordinated an intense lobbying effort to save the building. They succeeded. New York City bought Carnegie Hall and chartered it as a tax-free institution.
I look back with some wonderment. A friend of mine said it very succinctly. Henry Kinsler said that I won because I was naive. I didn't know it was impossible.
He has tremendous charm, tremendous dedication, and tremendous innocence. And the great things in this world are done by naive people. The skeptics always know the cost of everything. Isaac doesn't recognize any obstacles. He thinks that anything that's worth doing must be done.
He threw himself into the work at Carnegie Hall, and when studies showed that the building was in need of extensive renovation, Isaac Stern put his connections and influence to work, raising the funds.
There was a New York society lady who saw him in my house 25 years or so ago. And she said, "Who's this fat little guy in the corner there?" And about $2 million later of her money, she had found out who the fat little guy in the corner was.
Carnegie Hall was enshrined as the preeminent performance stage for the musical world. Isaac Stern had discovered that his voice could make a difference. His interests expanded beyond the stage. It meant less time for practice. The critics said that some of his concerts were less than perfect.
In some respects, he has tried to do too much. I thought he played too many concerts, and as a result of playing as many concerts as he did, some of them were less good than others.
Some people, it bothers me. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. You know, if he played well, he played well. If he didn't play well, he didn't play well. And he knew it.
Over the years, whenever he's performed, he has played on one of two extremely rare violins, both made by Guarneri del Gesù in Cremona, Italy, in the 1700s.
Now, Isaac, I'm sure that all of us would like to hear... Oh, do you mind if I look at your violin just a moment?
Not at all, Jack. Just be careful, will you?
Yes, I will. Beautiful tone.
Oh, it's a wonderful instrument. Great help to me.
It's cheap, though, isn't it?
Cheap?
Inside here, it says 1737.
That's the year.
An instrument is very much like a person. Each instrument has its own personality. It has its own voice. It has its own way to respond to what you're asking for. The violin he chooses has that depth of voice, that richness of soul, and I believe that's why he finds probably the perfect match to his own character.
String instruments are the closest things to the human voice. In the phrasing, in the way we use our larynx and tongue and throat to say, "I love you. I love you. I love you. Yeah, I love you." You know, same words, right? How many ways are there to say? So there's a note go da-dum or da-dum or da-dum. Same two notes. It's what happens between them. The same way you use your voice to give accent or impetus to what you really want to say.
Mr. Stern has never, as far as I know, fallen into the trap of doing only one type or one era of music. He really understands musicians and composers to a depth where it's almost scary, because you think, wow, how can one person know all that?
One of the wonderful things about Isaac is his boundless enthusiasm. He loves music. It consumes him. He has done an enormous amount in terms of first performances of new music. And not only first performances, but second and third. First performances aren't that difficult to come by. It's the second and third and fourth performances. And Isaac has committed himself to that.
He started a family in the 1950s. His second marriage, to Vera Lindenblit, lasted 45 years. They had 3 children together. The 2 boys became musicians. Their daughter became a rabbi. His moorings were a home in Connecticut, an apartment in New York City, and the road.
I love being on the road. I like going places. I like meeting people. I like being with people. I like being with them in their environment. And there's nothing in the world so wonderful as a great hotel. Pick up the phone, I want a sandwich, pick up the phone, get my laundry. What could be more wonderful?
He is constantly on the phone. He conducts international correspondence on the telephone. I can't imagine what his Rolodex looks like.
It's true, you know, all the time, all the time. It's a sort of illness, you know. And I don't know, maybe it's worse now. Maybe it is worse, I don't know, with a portable.
He requires a telephone at all times. His lifeline is a telephone.
I remember one time he was able to call me in a restaurant in Brittany. I was eating with some friends, some oysters, beautiful oysters. My God. And I don't know how he discovered that I was in this restaurant.
This thing about Isaac on telephone, it only means that Isaac is interested in so many different dimensions around him. There are great musicians who only practice the violin, go and play their concerts. They're not involved with the political situation of Israel or America or France, etc. Isaac is interested, and therefore the phone rings.
Hello? Isaac was probably less of a virtuoso in his manner than a great many violinists of an older age. Isaac manages to be a great violinist and a very normal person with a lot of normal interests of all kinds.
There was a time when he could rattle off the batting averages of every member of virtually every Major League Baseball team. He also was a terrific tennis player.
I've spoken of this story many, many times since then, but it was one of the biggest thrills of my, not tennis life, but my life. I was playing a number of years ago, many years ago now, in a tournament in Philadelphia, and played one of the best matches of my career. And after the match, there's a knock on the door, and the door opens, and Mr. Stern says, "You didn't miss a note out there." He says, "I'd like to play you a few notes." So he just went right into it with ease and grace. It was fantastic.
Isaac Stern is such a public personality, but I also think that there are aspects of him that are very private. It's not all public, because I think what comes out in public form, the genesis of that is actually from a very strong inner private side. And I think that's the side that leads him to be moved by things and to want to reach some kind of understanding, whether it's through performance or through talking or through teaching. There's definitely a strong drive from that source.
He never made his bar mitzvah. Religion played no part in his upbringing, but his ties to Israel are strong. His involvement dates to the early days of the Jewish state.
1949, just after the state had been declared, not long. I went on my first visit to Israel. There was something so positive. They were building, they were fighting, they were doing. It was infectious. One of the main things that it did, it changed, for me, the word Jew to a description rather than a pejorative. That was very personally important. I went there every year. I don't know how many times I've been there. It's probably over 100, 150 times. But it became, and still is, very much a part of my conscious and unconscious life. I may not be overtly religious, but I feel closely with my co-religionists.
I guess I've known Isaac since the early 70s. On Israel in those days, he was a hardliner. But that has changed enormously. In those days, he was marginally too hard. Now he's marginally too soft.
He's not a diplomat in the usual sense of the word. He's a servant of great cause. You can never separate between his music and between his feelings and between his thoughts.
Well, he's done amazing stuff here. You know, he's helped so many. In that respect, what comes to mind right now is the 73 war, the Yom Kippur War. It was a real awakening. And oh, let me tell you, it was not nice. Isaac came and then started going to hospitals.
What is so unusual about the violin, you never know what is the effect of it upon you. Tears, happiness, togetherness. I remember him with a mask on his face during the Kuwait-Iraq War.
The Scud missiles of Saddam Hussein were falling on Saudi Arabia and Israel. Still, Isaac came and played all over the country. So he played here at the Jerusalem Theater. There was a big audience, everyone with his gas mask. In the middle, the sirens went. You were expected to go to the air raid shelter. Some of the audience did, others did not. Why not? Because Isaac was standing there, and as if he hadn't heard the siren, you know? He really showed, first of all, complete identification with what was going on, and then also great courage.
I don't think that that's so extraordinary. They're there. Music can express a moment in everybody's life, under certain circumstances, a necessary second of repose in the middle of stress and strife. Everybody reacts to classical music in one way or another. You can't help it.
In 1979, 1 year after full diplomatic relations were restored with China, Stern arrived with his personal brand of musical diplomacy. The Academy Award-winning documentary, From Mao to Mozart, was made about that trip.
Very good, very good. That's exactly right. You see? Dancing.
I shall never forget the most unusual movie I saw, From Mao to Mozart. It changed very much my perception, I believe the perception of many other people about China. Because China emerged all the time as a powerful country, a large country, a communist country, with tough leaders, great leaders. All of a sudden, China appeared as a child at school. We tend to forget that nations are not just a political phenomena, that nations are children and music and feeling.
That's it.
And the way he taught them how to handle the violin demonstrated that we have less differences than we used to think. So I mean, bridging over faraway places, bridging over different people, by underlining the human aspect of them. the fact that all of us are children, or we have children, or we are childish, in the best sense of the word, is unbelievable.
In contributing to understanding between people and make them recognize each other's humanity better, on that music can play a crucial role. And taking a music that is not culturally built into Chinese history, Isaac created a tremendous living experience, and that sort of thing he does marvelously.
I remember him saying not so long ago that he had been listening to one of his earlier records, and he said, gee, I really played good in those days.
I remember listening to some incredible performances of Isaac, and you say to yourself, that's right. That's the way it goes. There's no other way it should go. That's it.
There's a saying about Isaac Stern that he leaves no tone unstirred. And that is actually absolutely true, because it's that kind of attention that singles him out, and that also makes his playing so communicative.
At age 78, Stern made what was for him an important trip to Germany. None of Isaac Stern's relatives in Europe survived the Second World War. It was believed that the Jews in his hometown had been rounded up and burned alive by the Nazis.
So we finally made it. We finally made it.
He traveled there with his third wife, Linda Reynolds, for his first ever visit to the land of Bach, Beethoven, Mendelssohn, and Brahms.
Get a good picture of the cathedral. Tells where we are.
It is, of necessity, a watershed in my life. I've never played there. I swore I would never play there. I've not played with a German orchestra ever, even on tour in any other country, since the war and since the Holocaust, for obvious reasons. I will not be playing. I'm going in to teach.
Yes, you're Guarneri.
Sleeping comfortably in New York. Arriving in Germany was not that moment of stepping down at Düsseldorf Airport. It was about a week and a half later, after we had visited Berlin, Leipzig, Dresden, that the totality of it began to seep in. And being in Berlin for the first time, first of all, looking and seeing, and looking at the Brandenburg Gate and seeing where the wall was, and then to go to this museum and walk into a structure that did not have a single sound, a single painting, a single marking, just concrete, gray, cold concrete. I've been to many, many Holocaust museums and remembrances. Nothing has screamed louder in my head than the silence of this building. If we don't start somehow finding a way to live together, despite the pains of past generations, then we're doomed. I have no illusions. Fiddle player going and talking, big deal. It's not great pronouncements of a political or religious or civil leader. Nowhere near it. The most I can be is friendly and willing to listen. One of the things I think about going to Germany is that I was always thinking, with whom are my grandchildren going to converse? With their grandchildren? On what basis? How about a human basis? How about growing up on the planet Earth at the same time?
For the past 40 years, Stern has taken an active interest in teaching. In the 1980s, he began a series of what he calls musical encounters for chamber music ensembles.
That's very good. What can we play for you tomorrow?
The purpose of the encounters is to bring a level of awareness about the music to exceedingly gifted young people. He loves young people. He remembers what it's like to be a young person. He remembers the doubts. He remembers the questions.
John, what did we talk about yesterday about position and getting the
Yeah,
that's what you shouldn't do.
Right.
Now
There
flatten
you go.
that wrist, flatten the wrist, and that's it. And now pull. That's it. That's it.
He believes in just putting you under the gun, but that's what a good teacher does. He pushes you.
No, I don't hear it, Sandy. Da-da-yam, because from the elbow. Da-dram. Yeah. Raise your elbow a little bit. That's it. That's it. Now raise the fiddle a little bit also. Raise the violin also.
You have to be awfully strong to be around him. You can't just be a gopher. But if he sees that you have the capability of understanding the depth of the meaning of the text, boy, he's relentless.
Always, after a long day's coaching, he always says, now go and think about it. And so, he leaves it up to us to really absorb everything and to decide what we would like to do. And I think that's really amazing.
He wants us to make it our own. We don't take from him, he gives to us, and then we make it something that's part of ourselves.
His big motto this week has been just, they're here to teach us how to teach ourselves. That's, I think, really, in the shortest amount of words, what he's about.
The composer wrote the words and the notes. So within that parameter, you have to make your own individual sound. But you have to understand, and the understanding comes out of you. It isn't just that it comes out of here, it comes out of here.
I think Isaac is probably a very satisfied person because music is an incredible force in nature, and I mean nature. And to be able to have done it as long as he has, to have had the health, give or take, and to maintain that standard, that's a blessing. It's amazing, really amazing.
Oh, the glamour of the great life around the world. putting on clothes, taking them off, getting the laundry done. Oh, such a glamour. I've never known a bad season. I've never had a time when I had fewer concerts than I wanted.
Now, this is where you really need technique.
Wherever I went, I was re-engaged. They wanted to hear me again. It's very special to be a performer, to walk out and know that people expect you to give them a little pleasure, solace, enjoyment, maybe a giggle from time to time, to be unashamedly and happily human. We're lucky to be able to do what we do. I'm called very often naive, romantic, impractical, senselessly hopeful. It's all true. I am all of that. I am. It's what makes me. But I believe that the art of the possible is not only description of diplomacy with which it has been always connected, but is also a description of what a civilized life can be.